have now been joined in London by His Royal Highness Prince Khalid Bandar Al Saud, and I'll invite him to come to the front and we will then have a conversation. Your Highness, you're most welcome. You joined a very interesting debate there in which they brought out a number of issues about ranking systems and universities in the Arab world relating to the rest of the world. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But can we perhaps start with the Saudi Vision 2030? We've spoken quite a lot in this conference about universities serving society. And I wonder if you might share with us a little bit about the vision and the ways in which your universities are contributing to it.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak, David. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Education is obviously one of the most important aspects of any country's development, not just development from a small point, but also development in terms of keeping your standard where you are. And you've seen in the last few years in Saudi Arabia, a huge emphasis in terms of our budgetary allocation to education, because we see the requirement. Vision 2030, just to give a quick capsule of what it actually is without getting into the detail, it's about providing quality of life, not just for the Saudis in Saudi Arabia, but for any resident in Saudi Arabia. That's a very grand ambition. It's about every aspect of one's life, from social interaction, culture, to economy and opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. And like any grand vision, it also has an element that goes beyond the borders of the country in terms of environment, economy, and things like that. But if I look at the great successes thus far of Vision 2030, and we're 5 years into our program, there have been some great successes, some targets we haven't hit yet, but we're hoping to hit them soon and before 2030. But one that's really astounded us, and I feel has a direct link to our education system and where we've come in the last 100 years, is one of the targets we had as part of Vision 2030 was to hit 30% of our labor force being women by 2030. And when we launched Vision 2030 in 2016, that number was about 17%, 18%. Today, we're at 36%. So we've not only hit the target, but we've surpassed it by a significant amount in a very short amount of time. And people say, well, how did you manage that? It wasn't us. It was the population. It was the people of the country who did it. And what really was the surprising factor, how ready women in Saudi Arabia were to take up the roles that were now made open to them. And I think you can attribute quite a lot of that to the education they had. They were well prepared, well ready, available, and they filled the roles that became available almost overnight. And so you saw this massive growth in women in our labor force, and it's been a great testament, one, to the determination of women in Saudi Arabia, but also to the education system that gave them the skills that were required to be there. And I think it's a success that should not be underestimated, because it's dramatically affected the country and its development. I think it's a big thumbs up to the women of Saudi Arabia.
And to the education system, yes. And to the education system as well.
No question.
One of the things which I notice from the press is that the Saudi higher education system is now looking outwards much more than it used to. And I think there are two respects that you may like to comment on. One is looking outwards in terms of collaborative research with universities in other countries, and also looking outwards in terms of scholarships that you are giving to Saudi citizens. And I know you always used to do that, but my sense is that you're now doing that much more so.
Absolutely. It's a privilege to be in the position I'm in as an ambassador, because I get to see quite a lot of what is happening that many people don't see. And COVID notwithstanding, the ability to get around the country and go to universities, see students, see some of the collaborations that are out there, they're really remarkable. In everything from life sciences, healthcare, all sorts of research. And research really is the fundamental, most important aspect of the product of a university, because research attracts the teachers, professors, etc. It attracts the high-level students, and it has the output that gives back the most to the societies around a university and the world as a whole. We have a fantastic collaboration with King Abdulaziz University and Oxford on developing healthcare and medicine and using AI. I mean, the list is endless. And these projects are really producing credible results that change lives every day, and they make lives better. And if that isn't the aim of a university, I don't know what is. So we look to expand on that. And the most successful partnerships have been exactly that by definition of the word is a partnership, where there's two sides. And I was in Oxford recently, visiting just in general, but I went to see this research center, and they were telling me that actually they've been so impressed with the Saudi students that they're dealing with in Saudi. They've asked for them to be sent to Oxford to become resident there. So it's remarkable what's happening on that front. It's part and parcel of what we do, and one of the things that I think is most important is to partner with someone. You have to be of a certain standard. And the fact that we're seeing partnerships increase is we were just talking about rankings, or listening to the chat about rankings, and how difficult it is to decide whether ranking is important or not. I mean, at the end of the day, ranking is a number based on a set of benchmarks that may not always be relevant. But a partnership, on the other hand, is a relationship between two parties. And if it's successful, and if you see them increasing, that shows that those partnerships are showing an equality of quality. And I think that's a real measure of success that is almost intangible, but is very obvious. And I'm very proud to see more requests for partnerships with universities in Saudi in all fields, from the sciences, tourism. It's a fantastic thing. I studied history at university, so I'd like to see more in the arts, but we're happy to see all of them all around, and anything I can do to improve those and enhance them, that's what I'm here for.
That's brilliant. Can I just take you back to the scholarship point? Because I think that's been important for many, many people. And you seem to be doing more of that now. Can you say a little bit about the thinking and the strategy?
Yes. So currently we have roughly about 11,000 students in the UK on scholarship. The number declined from about 16,000 pre-COVID, and obviously a lot of people went home during the COVID period. It's incredibly important for a number of reasons. We have about 45,000 scholarships around the world internationally. When your greatest resource as a country, the greatest capital resource you have is the human capital. And adding variety, different perspective, taking the best from what's out there and bringing it home is incredibly important. Now, that doesn't take away from the quality of the education provided at home. It's wonderful, it's fantastic, it's produced some of our best minds, but it's important to try and bring the best from everywhere. The world we live in today is no longer a country-by-country based society. We are an international society. The world is international. Every issue we face today is a cross-border issue. And every issue, no matter how small, will in some way be linked to somewhere else around the world. So bringing perspectives from different places is incredibly important. There's some universities that have incredible 1,000-year traditions. You bring some of that tradition with you. There are universities that were set up last year that are fantastic. You bring that new tradition with you. So it is part and parcel of what we do. An interesting point that links the first question with this one, talking about students and abroad and internationalism. When I was before I was appointed here, I went to see His Majesty to be officially sent abroad at the same time as a number of our new ambassadors were being sworn in. And after the official part of it, he asked everyone to leave the room except for the new ambassadors. And he said, "You sitting in front of me as new ambassadors are the testament to what we've done over the last 100 years. And the vision that King Abdulaziz, our founder, had when he brought this country together. When he was king, he had to rely on our neighbors, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, for people who had skills to do things, and in particular, the diplomatic service. He said, today, all of you are born and raised, bred Saudi. That is the greatest success to the system that we've set up, because now we are giving help to our neighbors in a way that we never could before. And that was it made me very proud to see the success of the system. And this is why we want the best for our population, and we're happy to send them wherever we can or wherever they get in. And amazingly, I was at university here at Oxford as an undergraduate, and I met a friend of mine who was the other Saudi when I was at Oxford. And when I was back last month, there are 53 Saudis now and 4 Rhodes Scholars. And that is in 20 years to go from 2 to 53 is quite an incredible, and those are scholarship students, let alone the ones that are there privately. So the successes are there, the determination is there, and luckily we have a great pool of talent to choose from.
You've not used this word, but I would like to put it in. I think what you're talking about there, going from 2 to 50 odd, suggests that something was started that was sustainable. And you talk about partnerships, we talk about research partnerships, as we have done in this event. The strongest partnerships are the sustainable ones. And they're the ones which involve research, they're the ones which involve students, and fantastic news that Oxford has invited Saudi students to come to Oxford. We are joined by universities right around the world, to some extent in this room, but to a greater extent online. If you could give them a message about how they might engage sustainably with universities in Saudi Arabia, what would that message be?
First, you've got to look for a complementary relationship. I mean, at its basic level. Any relationship, whether it is a marital relationship, friends, universities, businesses, you've got to want to be with each other. That's number one, which is important, is to have that personal interaction. And it has to be personal. This is not something you can do that is an agreement on paper, that sits on paper and stays on paper. That achieves very little, except for tick some boxes somewhere, which are pretty useless at the end of the day. I'm a big believer, and what we're doing in Saudi Arabia today is all about execution and practicality and achieving things, things that you can touch, feel, see. It's not about, in the region, we've often been criticized for having grand visions that are nothing more than just visions. But what we're doing today is beyond that. It is credible. It is there. You know, there are numbers behind it. There's massive amount of verifiable results, and just like, you know, women in the labor force. So you've got to get along. You've got to have subjects with which you can benefit both from each other, and it's a two-way benefit. It's not a one-way street. This a one-way street doesn't work or last very long, and we've seen that in the past. Some great ideas and relationships that began, but everything was one way, and it falls apart because the other side loses interest. When you benefit from each other, that's incredibly productive. But when you can provide a benefit for everyone outside of what you're doing, it's even much more impactful. And that's what you're seeing with some of these relationships, particularly that have been set up in recent times. And it's wonderful to see, because you bring people closer together. And in my position as a diplomat, my job is to bring people together and create an interaction and a dialogue. And quite often what I find is that there's a lot of misunderstanding between people. And the best way to break it down is not for me to explain it. It's to let people see it. Put them together in a room, let them talk, and they'll see they're not so different. The universities or students in Riyadh or Tabuk or Asir or Jeddah are not that different to universities and students in Manchester or Newcastle or Liverpool or London. They're people who want the same things. They want to improve themselves. They want to improve their families. They want to improve their lives and their countries. And you focus that energy in the right direction, you get great results. And I'm seeing a lot more of that. And, you know, listening to the conversations from this morning and this afternoon, it's great to see that that's right at the heart of the discussions that are being had by the institutions that are going to be essentially looking after the young people that are so crucial to both our countries, not just Saudi Arabia, and all countries, regionally, internationally. This is the future. And if we produce a future that is lesser quality than its potential, that's the fault of those of us who are providing that situation. So our aim should always be to provide the best for the future and let them take it from there. It's remarkable, some of the things I'm seeing, not just in Saudi, but in the Arab world. I have to say, young people taking their futures in their own hands, which is not something that we had traditionally done in the past in the region. So I'm full of optimism. You know, we do have a lot of problems in the Middle East, but they're solvable. And you know who's going to solve them? It's the generation of students that we're talking about in the universities of today. So there's an extra element of motivation to get this right.
I think that is a wonderful point on which to finish. From Gulf Conference's point of view, we are proud to have been part of the connections between the region and Saudi, and through this event, the world and Saudi. We're certainly ready to continue to play that role. And we wish you and your universities every success in continuing what you have already started. So thank you very much for joining us. We know that you're on an extremely tight timetable, but hopefully we can continue this conversation in the future.
Definitely, and thank you for having me, and thank you all for listening. I hope it was useful and beneficial, but like I said, I'm optimistic and hopeful, and I think this kind of dialogue is important. It's important to have these discussions. It's important to talk about what's most effectual for the future of all our countries. And like I said, I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you again and hopefully interacting again in the future. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.